Hey guys, there's this movie called Ultra Terrible, but it's actually pretty good, so I'm not sure why they called it that. It's about a fat kid and a skinny kid fighting against all odds to have the best senior year ending they can, but being confronted by bums and lowlifes around the way. I think this movie is important for everyone to watch to understand what it's like to be young in this country. So the movie starts out with the fat kid whipping around, talking to the skinny kid about beating his meats to women, so you already know this movie's gonna be about getting their sticks up. So the fat kid swoops his ally, and they go to the store to cop something, and there they talk about how they need to get their dicks wet really soon, but they don't know if they have the courage to do it. Then when they're walking out, the fat kid gets told by some weirdo who tells him that he can't come to his kickback, and there are so many things wrong with this scene. First off, how are you getting deboed by a nigga that looks like this, my guy? Second, this guy looks like even more of a dweeb than them. Regardless of what he looks like, how are you gonna let another man spit on you without some sort of retaliation? I mean, realistically, he could lose his life over some nonsense like that, and it doesn't even have to be physical. Like, couldn't you frame him for something or think of a way to get back? And third, why does this man look twice their age? If all the niggas here are seniors, what is he doing with them? Is he like that grown-ass man on The Simpsons, still playing Recess or something? Like, what's going on? But anyway, after this L, the fat kid gets on the skinny kid's ass for not having his back in the face of aggression from the ops. So then it cuts to school, where the fat kid almost has a stroke over having to use his legs, cause you know, he's obese. Then it cuts to the skinny kid, and he's talking to his bait, and she tells him about a party that he knows well he's banned from. So the girl starts exposing him for being a social outcast, and we get to see a glimpse of his life of lameness, but he has to cap about it, so that he doesn't look too down bad. In the next scene, the fat kid starts talking wild to the teacher, because he's been carrying the team in his home econ class, but then he calms down, because the teacher sets him up with a girl that he has a hard on for, so I guess the future is looking bright, except not really, because it's a little awkward, and nothing of importance happens. But then the girl tells the fat kid that she might be throwing a party, so this might be the fat kid's one chance at redemption. When the fat kid relays the message to the skinny one, some nerd they know walks in the class and tells them how he was stalking a female in a pretty uneventful manner, so we already know he's a lame. As such, the main characters decide not to tell him about their party, because they know he's gonna bring down their market value if they're seen with him. But then it turns out he's trying to get fake IDs, so the fat kid tells him about the party so that they can get the brawn for it. Then the main characters go back to talking about who they get hard for, and the fat kid says he doesn't like the skinny kid's wife because back when he was a fetus, he used to draw stiffs everywhere, and one time when he got hoed, she saw it and snitched on him, which made his life even worse than it was before. Then later on, the fat kid runs into his wife and she asks him if he can bring the brawn to the party, but of course he has to make it awkward because he's socially inept. Then he tells the skinny kid about it because he thinks he can pipe her if he pulls through, and also the skinny kid can finally get with his wife too. So the skinny kid tells his wife that he's pulling up to the party and that he can get the brawn for her, and while his mission was accomplished, he still managed to make it an L by being awkward. Then after school, they're waiting for the nerd to pull up with the fake ID, and the fat kid thinks he might have flaked out on them, but when he finally pulls up, they see that the nerd has managed to top himself when it comes to lameness, because his fake ID has a terrible name, so now there's a high probability of being compromised. So the main characters go to the crib to get ready and waste more time. They meet up with the nerd to come up with a plan to get the brown. The fat kid decides to go in and finesse some bottles, while the nerd and skinny kid stay back, and it's revealed here that they're going to be living together in college, but the skinny kid is trying to keep it low-key because he doesn't want the fat kid to get his feelings over it. While the fat kid is in the store, he starts running through different scenarios, but they're all fake, and he gets demotivated and retreats. So then they go to another store and have the nerd go in with his fake ID, but the nerd starts pussying out, so the fat kid has to put him back in his place. While he's in the store, the nerd is acting up and destroying property, which makes one of the workers consider ending it all. Meanwhile, the main characters are outside discussing the use of rubbers when it comes to piping hose down and other useless subjects. But while the nerd is trying to pay, some finesser does him dirty, so 12 shows up to fix the situation. Just seeing 12 makes the main characters think the nerd has been caught up, so they fuck off and leave their mans out to rot. 12 starts trolling the worker there, so she pisses off, and they decide to go after the nerd. At the same time, the main characters are evaluating their new plan, seeing as they can't get the brown through the nerd. But while he's talking, the fat kid gets hit by a whip, so 12 seems to believe that the nerd is actually a grown-ass man with the dumb name he gave them, so he might be safe. But then the cops offer to give him a ride to where he needs to go. Meanwhile, the guy that almost put the fat kid on a shirt tries to stop them from pressing charges, so the fat kid tells him to get the brown or face the consequences. When the man can't afford it, he offers to take them to a separate kickback that also has the brown, so that they can finesse more from there. But when they get in the whip with him, he starts talking like a weirdo, so they know they have to keep their distance. While the nerd is in a whip with 12, they show him their incompetence and tell him that he's gonna have to follow them on one of their missions, and he's just gonna have to deal with it. When the main characters finally get to the kickback, the guy who brought them there gets put on a stretcher by the guy holding the party, because it turns out he's not welcome there. The fat and skinny kid manage to avoid it, but then they debate because the skinny kid wants to evacuate, but the fat kid wants to get the brown first. When 12 gets to the scene of a crime, they manage to accomplish nothing, but the nerd gets in the criminal's way, so I guess he's responsible for stopping him. So 12 starts giving him some props. At the party, the fat kid starts getting grinded on by some woman, and the skinny kid gets a call from his wife, but his trash phone has even trashed her reception, so it seems like he's talking wilds to her, so it's another L in the life of a lame. Then the brown finally arrives, and the fat kid sees an opportunity, but it turns out the woman grinding on him was using him as a tampon because she's extremely disrespectful. So then he almost passes out and gets bullied by the grown men at the party. But while these grown-ass limbs are taking their time mocking him, he goes downstairs to clean himself. Then 12 gets a little closer with the nerd over their shared uselessness. While the fat kid is in the basement, he finds a whole fridge full of the brown, and he realizes the mission has been saved. While this is going on, the skinny kid gets harassed by some more grown men because they don't recognize him, so that's annoying. Then the guy that did the driver dirty earlier gets on the fat kid's ass because it turns out the girl who grinded on him was his wife. But it's like, how is it this nigga's fault you can't keep your hoe in check? Then you hear in the background talking nonsense like pipe down hoe. So the loser tries to throw hands, but he ends up hitting someone else, which instead ends up causing a riot in the crib, so the main characters use the opportunity to leave. But before they can do that, that dumbass hoe that grinded on the fat kid tries to do him cuts yet again, then calls 12 just to make things even worse. It turns out that the 12 that's been holding the nerd hostage has been called to the same party, so now they're on their way. After making their escape, the fat kid gets in his feelings over the skinny kid because he's going to a different college than him, and the skinny kid tells him that he's been holding him back, so they almost catch a fade. But then once again, the fat kid gets hit by a whip, but this time it's by 12. When 12 tries to cover up their wrongdoings as always, the nerd and the main character manage to do the dash, so 12 gets on their ass, but they can't make it. So the three make it to a bus where some guy from earlier starts trying to cause issues, but the fat kid has had enough for one day, so threatens to throw hands. But then they break a bottle and they get kicked out. While they're walking, the fat kid finds out from the nerd that he was planning to move in with the skinny kid in college, so now he's even more in his feelings. They finally get to the party, and the main character meets up with their wives, and the nerd gets with the girl he was stalking earlier in the movie. When the skinny kid sees his wife, it turns out she's too off-one to function, even though she wants him to hit. Then the fat kid tries to get off-one with his wife, but it turns out she's abstinent, and the only reason she hadn't bring the brown was so she can make her degenerate friends happy. After realizing that this has all been for nothing, the fat kid feels some type of way, and he tells his wife that he's hurt because he thought this was his last chance to get with her. But while she tries to make him feel better, he passes out and hits her on the head. Then 12 shows up to ruin everything, and the fat kid finds the skinny kid passed out and saves him from being caught up in the system. It turns out they always knew he was a youth, but they wanted to prove that being 12 could be cool too. And to all the viewers watching, they failed, because throughout this movie, they've shown themselves to be lames, incapable of solving any actual problems. But the guys reach an understanding, I guess, and they help the nerd look lit by pretending he's a threat to them or something while they arrest him. But then that dweeb that depoted the fat kid from earlier tries something on one of the cops, so he beats him into submission. While they're walking, the main characters decide to go back to one of their cribs. Also, the nerd and 12 are off doing some more nonsense in the corner somewhere. Whatever, back to the plots. So the fat and skinny kid are back in the crib, and the fat kid reveals that he saw the skinny kid's Hazian forms like a minute ago, so he already knew that he was gonna be moving in with the nerd. After this, they go back to being niggas, and they profess their love for each other, but not in that way, so don't take it there. Later on, they're in some clothes store, talking about what's a cop for the upcoming season, and while they're walking, they see their wives together, and it turns out the skinny kid's wife can't remember anything, yet she knows she was doing too much, so something isn't adding up. But they're both awkward about the fact that the fat kid's wife is now bruised in the eye, so the guys split up to attend to their women, and the movie ends with them coming to a full understanding of each other. Overall, this movie was pretty lit. It was actually funny. Like, you know, there are scenes that don't make you angry just by watching them, unlike later movies by the guy who wrote this one. Also, the plot itself is interesting, like you actually care what happens next. The only thing is, this movie can be inaccurate sometimes, like they really expect you to believe that the bummies looking niggas can apply pressure, or that women who look like the main love interests can be bothered tolerating the main characters as much as they did. But all of that's okay, because they told a story that was worth telling. The moral of the story is that if you're trying to get the brown, make sure that the niggas you're trying to get off one don't do you worse than if they were sober. Okay guys, make sure that when you subscribe you hit the notification button, because that lets you know whenever I make a new video, and as always, thanks for watching.